Fortunes are made or lost because of information.
They can either cut interest rates or they can print money.
The key feature here is speed, trying to follow what's going on in the international markets.
The roaring 20s.
We used to laugh at Amazon. I mean, I get it.
That was funny,
right?
Amazon.
Yeah, and we've laughed at Tesla along the way.
Oh, man, Tesla.
Damn it, that's what's happening.
So he had that information prior to anyone else.
If you don't, and they get you, then you lose money.
I listened and I transmitted and I analyzed. There's a little bit of detective work when you hear a little piece of information.
I don't know when all this madness started. I needed something more than stocks, something more physical than Bitcoin. I make American bucks for labor, and I'm acutely aware 40% of all dollars were printed just last year, making them worth less. My salary hasn't kept up with this inflation, and stocks need to run 15% just to keep up with federal money printing. As I read in The Economist and the Journal, I'm not alone, and that investors are venturing further out on the risk curve to find yield against inflation. In the following 90 days, I will travel out to the farthest end of the risk curve. If I like it, I'll want to see what's there, and perhaps I'll even give it a name. For now, the journey has only started, and someone could outbid me on a Vitalik G.A.S rookie card I found on eBay. Driving through rural Maine with limited connectivity, I pull over to get this goddamn card. $35, and it's mine. The label says G.A.S, G.A.S. I don't know what the fuck that means. It's probably some Ethereum shit, I think. As gas fees are transaction costs around Ethereum, and Vitalik is the founder, I must be buying his gas card. The thought process was, I'm gonna search eBay for a Satoshi Nakamoto or Vitalik Buterin card because that would be cool to have. It seems like everyone is investing in ownership of digital artwork or NFTs, and I still like real physical art. So much so, I started a blockchain on Twitter and printed each tweet on a shirt, an NF tweet shirt, if you will. We are currently on block number 0000008, but the feeling was, at least for $20, my friends could wear their crypto instead of buying dog token JPEGs. They could cut it up for regs. Who cares? When everyone zigs, I'll zag, and crypto collectibles will harden my labor dollars before they melt like an ice cube. If I'm honest, this started last year. I noticed Bitcoin Magazine had issues with their first print from May 2012, and I bought one. It cost $800. Sure, I had one in 2012, living in Woodland Hills, but it was coffee stained, so I threw it out in a crosstown move. Now, I want it back, and there's a cost to that. This magazine is important. It captures the frustration and malaise post-financial crisis. It is, in fact, a crossroads of sorts, as Vitalik writes for the magazine after previously accepting Bitcoin for articles online, sometimes not finishing them until the online cypherpunks paid him in full. I guess as I round out my 30s and have found some financial success, I'm trying to backtrack and collect what was lost, what mattered, but couldn't survive countless moves, breakups, bouts of depression, drinking, traveling, living on the edge. Everyone my age seems to have a sob story about Bitcoin. I'll recap mine here only for reference, not for sympathy. I fucked up and probably lost $6 million. When people tell me I'm doing an excellent job with life or money, I thank them, but secretly I laugh to myself, reflecting only now how in the last 2 decades, I can easily say I have had more opportunities to become one of the wealthiest individuals on earth and fucked it up at every turn. My current success is now the scraps, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. I've found the longest, most arduous road to financial freedom. I can't regret much. I can only tell the tale with good humor and believe that everything does happen for a reason. In high school, I was a punk. Not because of Operation Ivy or Green Day cassette tapes screaming from the Chevy Nova, not because of dyed hair and piercings, or not even from skate or snowboard clothes my then little body swam in. I was punk because I thought differently. Who says I can't do it myself? Run a cigarette cartel from my locker, take a cheerleader to prom, drop LSD, hell, even ace an English test. It got so comfortable every morning I'd walk into the teacher's lounge and actually grab a coffee cup that said world's best teacher. I didn't need permission or forgiveness. An art project forum was approved for me to graffiti the entire arts wing with plur, P-L-U-R, which in the rave culture, back in the day, meant peace, love, unity, and respect. I liked that. And that project happened. For credit. Now mind you, this school isn't some private, liberal, creative, hippie woo-woo California joint. It's just another suburban Western New York public built and paid for state government school. The school was good. It would have been wise to slow down and enjoy it more. You can't go back, so it's probably best to enjoy youth. Of course, I found the less traveled option, a rarely used, but available, loophole to apply to take all your remaining high school classes at once. After grade 10, there were now 2 years of life crammed into one. It's hard to recall the reason I needed to submit an essay with parental permission. I made up some bullshit that would satisfy the school, and my parents signed off. The school approved it and stacked all of my classes to graduate in the year 2000. Privately, I remember feeling the need to get out into the world so strong it couldn't wait. A wanderlust was brewing. A respected adult told me one Friday night in town that I was a loser, a punk, that I'd never become anything, that I'd never even be Hamburg, New York, whatever the fuck that means. The following Monday, the forms were in, and a chip on the shoulder was chiseled. Fuck you, I'll never be Hamburg, New York chiseled. It all worked. I pushed the kind of paper by day that landed consistent honor roll for both grades at once, and traded that funny kind of paper by night that makes a lot of money to a high school student in $5 increments, by units of strips, sheets, and books. A condensed diploma and a 1988 Chevy Nova pushed on to Phoenix after some USA road trips. 2001 was a blur, a mix of raves, MDMA, electronic music, film, and even Tai Chi classes. I took these classes at Scottsdale Community College. They were cheap, and they were fun. 9/11 shook my roommate and me to our core, like most people at that time. Being 18 years old in the desert, on what felt like the edge of the world, was already intense. CNN showing images of New York City, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania being attacked felt like some epic Ridley Scott film, suddenly real. Fuck this. I'm leaving. I'm going back to New York, bud. Was it even an entire year? Probably not. We discussed this moment being like the apocalypse and moving into the mountains with provisions, but ultimately, I wanted to make sure I spent time with my parents in New York State. 9/11 was a gut check on what was important. Once back, another community college, which Tesla Q did so well to point out as a mark of miseducation during Twitter spats last decade. That chip on the shoulder remained. I love to read, I love to write, study, and learn, and so quickly graduated with a near perfect 4.0 GPA, Phi Theta Kappa, academic honors. I love philosophy, logic, social science, and psychology. Who cares if it's a community college? If you have a hunger to learn and a healthy curiosity, you can get more there at a community college than a disinterested student at an Ivy League school. A new policy emerged. To try anything, say yes to everything. Why create limits of what a punk kid from a country town could do? With this new attitude, I went to Pennsylvania and took classes to get a pyrotechnics license. Hell, I went through the New York real estate licensing program and became an accredited agent. While getting a degree in social science, no time was wasted starting the Night Shift podcast, which competed in the very early days as the best podcast behind Keith and the Girl. This was the early days. I paired my best bud Phil, a comedian, with my brother, who could be pretty entertaining over a couple of beers. A podcast in 2002 was tough to pull off. RSS feeds and podbean.com, it was all this exotic stuff. You have to remember, this was 5 years, even before the iPhone. We were too early on this new podcast media format. It was ditched, abandoned, forgotten. Since I'd never be Hamburg, I decided to write Harvard University a letter with my junior college transcripts and a formidable check, at least for me, at that time. I don't think they'd take transfer students. I don't know how it all worked. But by the spring of 2004, I was moving into Leverett House on a conditional extension basis. It was the time of the Facebook launch, and .edu addresses got an invite. Shit, I could have walked like 3 minutes from Leverett to Kirkland House, 0.2 miles, primarily flat, and got involved, maybe even made some money. It's all good. Probably while Peter Thiel was pulling Zuck out of Harvard to Silicon Valley, I was rowing the Charles near the Weld Boathouse. Every weekend, out on the Charles River. Probably could have befriended the two tall twins in athletic shape, almost Olympic shape, that always seemed to be around. Those were the Winklevoss twins. But who needs friends like that? Although studying Keynesian economics wouldn't have been where I landed as an economist, it was probably valuable for learning against. I don't regret taking psychology or government classes either while in Cambridge. A few professors and TAs started to like me, and Cambridge is an awful lovely town to live in. Another student, named Matthew Foote, initially from London, told me about living in A-frame bungalows on the Gulf of Thailand for $1 a night, exotic full moon parties, with EDM, beautiful beaches. It sounded great, but it sounded like something I'd never do. Hell, I'd never be Hamburg. Doing something I'd never do was cemented as a mode of being when I left Boston, Massachusetts, with a ticket to Bangkok that seemed like the longest flight a human could take, short of going to space. My biography tells the story of how close you can be to something so life-changing and miss it. While teaching English in Thailand, I was offered an opportunity to work in a new upstart Chinese city, Shenzhen, doing imports and exports. Anyone familiar with the rise of China, 2000 to 2020, can understand what a miss this was. Another life path ignored. Sometimes missing opportunities that, in retrospect, were in hand is more painful than never having a chance. To be that close and walk the other way every time, it's something special. Special and devastating. After Thailand, a lot happened to get the opportunity to land on Hollywood Boulevard. No car and only $200 to my name. My friend Ryan and I slept in rented bunk beds at the Banana Bungalow for $14 a night, subsidized by scrubbing the floors and driving tourists to LAX. Friends tried different things, and Ryan, a dear old friend, was replaced in 2008 by Phil Arrigo, who was the co-host of Night Shift Podcast. We moved up in the world, to a total shithole in North Hollywood. I think it was on Van Owen and Laurel. This place actually had separate personal bedrooms. It was amazing to us. We were a good team. Phil's probably the funniest person I've known, besides maybe Tim Conway. If 1 out of every 10,000 people are actually talented and are told they should move to LA and make it, Phil, he'd be that one. He got sets immediately at the Comedy Store and even the Haha in North Hollywood, and quickly advanced in film and television. In 2008, 2009, we had navigated a financial crash and a Hollywood writer's strike successfully, even had decent employment on reality TV shows. We wanted to make something of our own, and worked with Brett Gurewitz of Epitaph Records, who then led us to Mark Rainey of TKO Records to make our self-produced show, Punk Off. Growing up in Hamburg, New York, listening to California bands, we could have never imagined sitting around with these punk heroes on the West Coast, filming interviews in Los Angeles, or even on the road at South by Southwest having beers. Life moves fast. We had built decent PCs for editing digital videotapes in Adobe Premiere. It was a significant investment for our financial status. One weekend I got lost researching an idea because a project of my own from the year 2000 that attempted to create digital money through people sending me their spare change, it lingered on the brain. I'll admit, it's stupid in retrospect, but it was 21 fucking years ago. I was 17 years old, trying to create a decentralized organization, fear of missing out, into a digitized progress coin. Somehow, I found a print of this pitch and photographed it for Phil while cleaning the house last year. In 2009, I was old enough to know how stupid the IWannaBeRich.com project was, of course. But at that point, I'm doing internet searches to see if there's anything like it yet. Does digital money exist? We know where this is going, right? Bitcoin was invented in the wake of the 2008 Great Financial Crisis, or GFC. It instantly made sense to me. Excited, I theorized with Phil that we could mine thousands a week with our hotshot editing PCs. He asked me how much that was worth. Sadly, I had to tell him nothing. This retrospect isn't a "how dumb was Phil" column. It was the right question to ask at that time from him. And after the strikes and the GFC, you'd better grind with what you know. For us, that was video editing. I didn't push him hard. I didn't have the conviction. I called my brother, who lived in Phoenix, and tried to explain Bitcoin, the big B, and the little b, the currency. He was always a pirate outlaw kind of guy. Bart, as in Black Bart. I picked up the phone, called him, and framed it through the lens of a digital treasure for hunters found using computer power. At this point, I couldn't have explained SHA-2 or 256, Merkle trees, proof of work, or anything, but sometimes you pitch exciting ideas to get another human being behind you, build momentum. For Bitcoin, I couldn't find anyone. I took off for Europe to explore the world. An excuse is always good, so I packed a bunch of soon-to-be outdated DVX-100 camera gear and tapes on my back to shoot an art film. I planned to meet a friend, Adam, in London, but he encountered a customs issue at Heathrow. 2 days later, his sister Facebook messaged me that they didn't like the way he looked. They flew him back to New York. I had to throw away half the tape stock and the tripod to cut down on the weight that he would have carried, and I kept on going. For months, I traveled, an early iPhone in hand, and fell down a rabbit hole of how US currency is not backed by gold, or much of anything for that matter. Everything I learned about economics in school was bullshit. An epiphany in hand, halfway educated, studying Menger, Mises, and Bitcoin in Austria just months after its invention. I know everyone has a would have, could have story about investments, but this, in retrospect, it's like finding a man dead in the desert of thirst that walked all the way to the pond and just fell short. Here I was, with all the information, with Bitcoin, in Austria, with the economics, and nothing to show for it. I remember buying 101 Bitcoin for some reason. I don't know why 101. It was a proof of concept and excitement. If I'm sincere, it could have been 1,001, 10,001, maybe just one. I honestly don't remember. And I finished treasure hunting. I've looked everywhere. I don't know where it went. There was no easy cold storage in those days. You had a wallet address to write down or put in your notes and lose. I did. All surviving scraps and messages I've examined, all remaining thumb drives explored. It was once had and now lost. Perhaps never had and imagined. The result is the same. To be honest, at this point, I'm just a community college graduate with no Bitcoin. My European art film Wanderlust sucks, and making it in America will be tough. No matter how few footsteps in one direction I could have taken to be the original gangster in almost everything that matters today, it's the past. It's over. In the next few years, I took the wrong path with the most critical education and work completed, yet no fruits from this labor. My education during this time. The US dollar was a flimsy fiat currency and could be printed with a button push. The banks were bailed out, trading mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, like drunken sailors. QE had been ramped, and hard money was more important than ever. My reaction? I bought silver. Physical silver. Bars, rounds, coal, whatever APMEX would sell, and shipped. I had foolishly sold stocks when ShareBuilder and ING folded, and went into giving lending club loans. Chase a yield for more hard money silver purchases. At some point in early 2013, I felt Bitcoin was still there for me at any time. I tracked it around $20 and thought it wouldn't get away from me if I followed the news. It got away from me. In January of 2013, I lost 3 friends in Acton, California. They died in a terrible helicopter crash. It was a cold, miserable all-nighter. Our lunch must have been after midnight on a rugged horse ranch and ate catering next to a space heater run off a gas generator. I had known Dave well, not from this Discovery Channel production, but flying with him on shows like The Biggest Loser for NBC, at least 5 years by then. As we gnawed on our food before the air temperature took all the heat out of it, I asked Dave what he had been working on. I'll tell you, Griff, get more work lately in agriculture than TV. With these cold temps we've been having, the farmers pay me to fly all night over the crops. It's hard to believe, but as the rotor spins, it creates some friction in the air, warms up those crops. Just a degree, but enough to save them. It's peaceful out there. I love to fly. Sometimes that 1 degree, it makes all the difference. This dialogue is paraphrased, but honestly, pretty fucking close to that exact conversation we had. The last one he'd ever have on Earth. I had done all the prep with the director of photography, Darren, and was excited to work with him. He was a new DP for me. We knocked off the previous 2 weeks like old partners. Mike, the third soul we lost that night, I didn't know well. But by all accounts, he was a great human being. He was friendly and easy to work with. That first helicopter pass, after Dave and I finished lunch, it's a blur. The bird went up. It was supposed to fly over the car I was rigging and hiding in, on the hill. And right before it did, nose down crash. This column is not about that evening, not about turning age 30 on the day of their funerals, not about how I internalized the incident, none of that. What I will say that stuck with me, the last thing Dave Gibbs said to me that night, 1 degree can make all the difference. My girlfriend, Steph, and her family were incredibly supportive at that time, and I reacted poorly that year, drinking too much, escaping Los Angeles for too long. Bravo Network called me to live in Nashville that spring and film a low-stress, unimportant reality show. It was a good turning point on a challenging year. I was still buying silver at all-time highs in Nashville. Cyprus had a terrible Greek debt and bonds financial crisis. Can you believe it? This crisis caused Bitcoin to spike in price, cracking $100 a coin, if memory serves. At that point, I felt it had gotten away from me. $100 a Bitcoin. The worst phrase in finance is, I thought I was late and missed it. However, good distractions were in play. Tesla was building destination chargers behind a wooden partition at the extended stay Hilton we had lived, and I got talking to the guys on the project. Before I left town, the Tesla investment idea had hit me like a bolt of lightning. My new focus would be selling my silver at a loss and doing everything possible to exit lending club loans early, even on the black market, and even at a more significant loss. Everything from 2013 on was gathering resources for the Tesla and Bitcoin investment. The Tesla idea and investment took a full 2 years to build initial capital to support. My previous investments were clunky, illiquid, even ill-advised. Ken Burns is known as one of the most significant documentary filmmakers ever. I met him in an elevator of that same Hilton with a copy of Driving Blind, our documentary, on my person. I introduced myself, I gave it to him, he loved it. He even wrote us a proper poster quote, and the film crushed it at festivals, raising 6 figures for the blind. Once you start reverse engineering history, to have been earlier on an investment, you realize that the butterfly effect, that reverse butterfly effect might start changing the things that you love in your past, present, and future. Things are how they should be. You can't play the should have game. In 2016, I was so happy to be out the other side of the silver and loan investments. Even though I had capital losses, I had capital. I think my first tweet to Elon Musk was something like, I finally have my first Tesla share. It's only one, but it's my favorite one. I had by that time sucked up 2 years of Tesla bullishness and sucked out capital. Tesla Motors Incorporated and Solar City were my main targets. I quickly traded up other tech stocks using ARK Investments research when they were just an unknown boutique firm. In retrospect, some trades looked pretty terrible. Flipping $2 Enphase for $3, cashing in Square Capital stock at $50 a share. But I put in a Tesla. I bought every great company and sold it too soon. But it was for $150 Tesla, pre-split. It could have been worse. All of this madness and Bitcoin are still getting away. At this point, I'm into Ethereum and smart contracts, designing perfect karma currency, a good deeds-based mining currency. Well, back in Europe with my future partner of this magazine, Andy Nelson. Some baby DAO on Ethereum had a code flaw and was leaking like a sieve, and I'm pissed. I'm back into Bitcoin and Tesla. People overuse the did you know the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. They use that saying so much, I'm loath to repeat it here. Alas, I just did. It seems like reciting that definition is insanity. All I can tell you is I spent much of 2009 to the present thinking very intensely about Bitcoin and Tesla. Tesla and Bitcoin. I got cute, complicating 2 investments with other things because I was sure it had to be more difficult. However, at the end of every long thought ledger was the same result. Simply, buy Tesla and Bitcoin. I don't know how these things may have been so important to me for so long, and yet I have so little. This misfortune isn't some cry me a river bullshit sob story. My net asset value is okay for 38 years old. It just occurred to me that I've been at the right place at the right time, and if you change a move just 1 degree here or there, I'd be at the higher end of the Forbes list. Honestly, I believe I represent the least possible amount of wealth for the most direct constant exposure to it. I'm telling you this story to entertain you, at my expense, because it's kind of fucking funny or stupid, or maybe it's even sad. But at a minimum, it's a base account of how one becomes a gas head. I do have a ton of experience seeing value early and waiting too long for someone else to validate my work. I do not wait for other people anymore. Split from the pack. You don't need the comfort of the herd. Still, do the work, but make sure you move before anyone else has burned a cerebral calorie. It's instinct. Instinct is a collection of all the learnings from your fuck-ups or tiny successes, your logic being validated or remastered. I cannot out-trade someone on technical analysis. I can't beat the arbs on cash carrier algorithms on high frequency. Since around the new year of 2020, my best moves have been pure instinct. I'm doing the math in my head, but replacing numbers with logical inputs and outputs against a vision of the near and far future. If I said this in the company of sharp, experienced traders, they'd say, "Oh, you've been in a bull market, genius." I know. But after 20 years, I can genuinely say it's all instinct. Andy and I make this magazine to sharpen our instinct and to make you better investors by sharpening yours. Not easy answers, but asking the right questions. Back in 2001, Ryan and I founded Perfect Karma. The idea was anything we do would put positive energy forward to be recycled once again. and that philosophy never got old. But the company became mine. Our 2013 documentary feature Driving Blind carried that name and made good on that original promise. It raised more than $200,000 for the blind by some accounts. After festival wins, Ford Motors approached me to make a Go Further commercial about the very point of making the film. Still, by 2016, I wanted more for Perfect Karma. I needed to create a Perfect Karma currency, PKC. It would be a currency that could only be minted by doing positive work, maybe an EV purchase, a solar roof, planting trees, feeding the homeless, picking up trash. Everything would have a proof of work credit, and it's good money. Businesses would accept it to show they support progress. I was into the carbon credit Ethereum rabbit hole and decentralized finance, but there was no support, which was sad. PKC was a good idea this time, but I consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist now. It's all that matters. If you have the Bitcoin mindset, all the Perfect Karma stuff will happen. On the following page, my white paper from 2017, just for fun. Excuse the language. 4 years ago, the vocabulary was different, as it is now in the cryptocurrency space. Email, August 5th, 2017, to my technical supervisor, Brian Allen. Hey Brian, we've been over most of this already. Just wanted to get an existing and flexible document going for anyone we needed to explain this crazy idea. It's not stone, so best guesses. Of course, figuring out the tech is the next quite difficult step. The project is called Perfect Karma Currency, PKCP. Common name, PKC. This can refer to Perfect Karma coin or currency. Built as a dApp, or a decentralized application that uses Ethereum blockchain to authenticate Perfect Karma currency or tokens through smart contracts. Objective: to create a viable and valuable digital currency that is created or awarded when a user does something positive for Earth, for humanity. This type of cryptocurrency mining is unique and different from Bitcoin. As opposed to powerful computers burning grid electricity to find Easter eggs, PKC origination occurs when a user does something positive to earn a Perfect Karma token. Although the mining is organic in nature, computer processing will still be needed with Ethereum to authenticate the good work of the miners. A certain coin amount is awarded when the peer community comes to the most likely majority consensus that good money has been created and should be awarded. Most small to medium awards will disperse in a timely fashion, perhaps 51% majority upvote within a week or even a day. It should be noted, authenticating good mining activity is in itself a good deed and should be awarded to the authenticator on a percentage basis. This gives the system life, and that everyone has a seat at the table and a stake to improve their own PKC wallet. To prevent whales from only authenticating large transactions, such as a solar roof installation or large humanitarian project, it will be required of authenticators to approve small transactions to earn the right to approve larger ones. The initial coin amount shall be 1 trillion and should not change over time, money printing. However, the value of individual coins will naturally fluctuate as more businesses accept the currency, appreciate the value, and find PKC as a tool to offset what may be lacking in proper business conduct. Think carbon offsets. Perfect Karma shall keep a reserve, a transparent percentage of the trillion pie to help finance operating costs, award remarkable deeds or actions that require a board vote, and establish a central bank. The initial work that needs to be established requires a GVC, or General Value Chart. The GVC shall be exhaustive and thorough as possible to automate coin distribution according to perceived value of good. For example, planting a tree might disperse 1 coin. Installing a solar roof may disperse 100. This is, of course, probably not correct yet, but an example. There will be a platform for miners to request a special exception payout for an act or deed that is not outlined by the GVC. After the coins are dispersed, over a very long time, scaled similar to Bitcoin where difficulty and scarcity follow an S-curve, the good money in circulation shall be used like any other real or fiat currency. The only difference, people will understand the actual currency that they use in trade originated from good work and will of people. It would be the board's intention to see a PKC app, something that would allow users to bump each other PKC when they witness a good deed or action. This will only develop along the lines of currency popularity. It is the intention of Perfect Karma to perform authentication of a good deed, which is the creation of Perfect Karma itself, in an attempt to keep clean, transparent ledger and justify the central bank. This is by no means an exhaustive explanation of an exciting new currency, All ideas require flexibility and change as new information is added. It is, however, the best I can do to outline these basic principles and intentions. As team members are added to the board, percentage of the reserve, or stock, shall be decided on a case-by-case basis fairly, according to the team members' input. Although not a traditional nonprofit, I envision much good coming to many through this process, and follow the do no evil, or do what's right when no one is looking. This means taking industry standard salaries in the case of success, and always putting the idea before self. Thank you for consideration at this extremely early stage. Join us next week on UI Pod, where we go further and further down the rabbit hole, burn gas in thousands of miles along the way, and meet a man named Mr. Dibbles.